Right, good afternoon. It's just turned 2 o'clock. Welcome you all to the Cornwall Infrastructure Service Transformation Committee. Straight on to agenda 1, that's apologies.
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillors Paul Lloyd, Mike White and Nicola Matthews.
Thanks, Sam. 2 then, any disclosures of personal and prejudicial interest? No. And 3, to approve and sign the minutes of the previous meeting as a correct record, pages 1 and 2. I'll go through them. Well, page 1, page 2. Anybody move? Wendy, thanks. And then 4 then is today's topic is maintenance of road infrastructure. Andrew, do you want to say anything before we start?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I won't take you all into the in-depth of the report. I'm sure members have got a few points to raise and some discussion topics that we can have on the report. They say the SCC is here for member input anyway, but I just want to put on record my thanks to Bob Fenwick for a fantastic report for the STC and to our all our highways teams, in fact, for the excellent work they do in some very challenging circumstances over the last year. So I'm happy to pass over to Bob if he wants to go through the report, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Yeah. Bob, it's all yours. It's all yours.
There we go. I do need the microphone because I'm not that loud then. Okay, the report is fairly much as it stands. It details the extent of the highway asset, particularly with carriageways. We do tend to focus on carriageways a lot because they make up something like 90% of the value of the asset. So in terms of replacement costs, maintenance, everything else, carriageways are by far the biggest sector. There's a lot of minor detail in things like public lighting, drainage, bridges and structures, safety barriers. I can answer questions on all of those, but I haven't particularly focused on them again because of general value of the work. In this report, I have added a little bit about highway drainage. And again, I've tried to distinguish between flooding, surface water flooding, land drainage and highway drainage. Now, highway drainage is very distinct, that it's there to drain the road, to keep the road clear where possible. Obviously, we get dragged into an awful lot of surface water flooding and issues where people's houses are being threatened. We will always do what we can to help, but the responsibility and the point of mentioning this again and again is always to try and reinforce that actually we're assisting rather than being responsible for it. So we put the clear distinction out in here. And I have got other teams that look at land drainage to look at advise people. Not always easy to explain to somebody who's just been flooded that it's actually not your responsibility, but you know that's in there. Other than that, we follow asset management processes. There's a Welsh asset management project that's been going best part of 15 years now, or somewhere around that. We've been key members from the beginning. It's developed a set of policies and a set of procedures. For instance, the way we all calculate the backlog figure or how much value of work needs to be done on the roads is all consistent across Wales. When we look at safety policies, we look at intervention levels, that's all consistent across Wales. So we've done a lot of these sort of collaborative working arrangements. How we inspect the highway, we've got our own certification scheme for highway inspectors that's across Wales. Visual inspections, how they're done. Again, we've set up processes that we've agreed at a sort of high level across Wales, and then everyone follows them. People do differ from that slightly. We try and keep it as close to it as possible because it gives us good arguments and good defence in court. We maintain things in both reactive and proactive ways. We have routine maintenance is mainly reactive, so people report things, we see things, we fix them, or we list them to be fixed in due course. And then we've got our planned maintenance, which are the big capital schemes. where we look at resurfacing, we look at capital drainage works, improvements to culverts, things like that. There's a bridges and structures similar budget for looking at the assets as they wear out. I don't cover it, but I can answer questions on it. So that's us really. We planned routine maintenance, reactive. Winter maintenance is quite interesting at the moment. We've had a very quiet winter this year compared to normal until the last week. Today's forecast has road surface temperatures dropping as low as -7.5 degrees, which is extremely cold. And we are a little bit wary about the heavy rain that's, well, I would say heavy rain, it's not flooding heavy rain, but the rain that we're expecting over the weekend could, the rain we've got over the weekend could have an impact where the roads are still frozen. So there's various questions you can ask on that if you want. But I say it's been a quiet winter so far, but we have been back-to-back running for the last 2 or 3 days. The same guys that carry out the gridding do the flooding and do the road repairs. So if I've got a team of 6 drivers out overnight, they won't be in the next day, which means I lose 6 of my 30-odd labourers, and teams have to be rearranged. There's a lot of juggling, a lot of rearrangement goes on. I'm fortunate to have some very good people working under me, supervisors and managers, both in planned maintenance, street works and in routine maintenance. We're a bit short on the ground with workforce. We've got, I think, 10 vacancies out across my 3 teams at the moment. We pay similar to an Amazon delivery driver. So getting someone who is a qualified road worker or prepared to work in all weathers doing heavy labour, it's not as easy as it used to be. But those are challenges we're trying to face, bring on trainees, train them up. There we go. I think that's a general overview rather than just going through the report page by page. And I'm here to answer questions, so shoot.
I go Stuart.
Thank you, Chair. The first thing I wanted to say is I wanted to thank Bob and his team. They do some excellent work and they are very responsive when you ask them to help out. A couple of things I would note, having read through the report and sort of looking forward, as it were, the key thing here in my mind is resourcing, is being able to put the finance that's needed to meet the plan that you've got, which is £8 or £9 million per year in terms of planned maintenance. I think that probably equates to about 30 kilometres of road or something that needs to be repaired. I mean, every ward will have its own stories about roads that it's got. I mean, Waters Road is looking bad in my ward. There's a few others. I'm sure I could mention a long list. One of the things I think is really good about the department and it's previously done is it's put together an asset management plan, which looks at highways and the way in which they are going to approach it. And so you kind of had an understanding and knowledge of when those roads are going to be done. What I have seen is probably resource related from what Bob was saying, is a slippage in some of those programmes. Some of the roads seem to be being done later, and some of them seem to be done not in the same depth that they were previously proposed. There seems to be a sort of a change of approach there. I don't know if anybody could comment. Do we not plane the roads as deep as we used to? Because when we resurfaced them, some of the surface doesn't seem to last as long as it used to. And one of the things I think is really good is I know that the pothole line, people do come out and they do repair it within a really good time frame, usually 24 hours, 48. However, some of that comes out very quickly again. You know, it could be back and needing doing within a few weeks or months. I certainly know of examples of that in my area. And in terms of drainage, I saw that the drains were going to be completely surveyed and dealt with on a 3 yearly cycle. I'm not sure if we're being able to achieve that with the resources that we've got. I know that my colleague Peter May absolutely loves the drains, and that's probably happening to a certain degree in our own ward with the support of the department, which is always appreciated. So I suppose the final point really is I know that the administration really made much in the lead up to the elections and afterwards, and subsequent budget announcements of putting more money into highways maintenance. Before the last election, they said that they were putting an extra 10 million in on top of their normal spend. And I think in the last time that Rob Stewart got up and gave us some surprise good announcements in the last budget, he said he was putting another 5 million on top again. So there should be another 15 million pounds on top of what you guys have already normally planned to have in the system. So I don't know if that's been actually delivered, or it's been cut back, or they haven't been able to meet their promises. But if you can, we need to finance this. And I know that the Welsh Assembly are very keen on active travel, but if they could balance their basket a bit better and put a bit more to roads rather than cycleways, I think that would probably be appreciated by the general public as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Stuart. Although you did slip into scrutiny then for about 60% of that, because we are trying to look at this and then move forward. I know it is a struggle, because I should have mentioned, try not to mention potholes in your own ward. But you know, the questions you've asked were scrutiny questions that would have been asked elsewhere. But if you want to answer, I'll have a go then. I'll stop you if you're drifting into.
I'll be quick, but I can try and answer the questions.
There's no need to be quick.
Firstly, Stuart mentioned the Highways Asset Management Programme. There's two things to be distinct on here, and we actually changed the name of one of them because we have a Highways Asset Management Plan and a Highways Works Programme. And that's probably the one he was talking about, where we have a 5-year plan of which roads we're going to be doing going forward. We call that our Forward Works Programme now. So it's still there. It's still best practice. We are ahead of schedule on that. And the 24-25 programme, we're hoping to finish halfway through next year. So we regard ourselves, we are ahead of programme on that one, on the 5-year plan. The Highway Asset Management Plan, that is overdue. Most authorities in Wales have struggled with it. We've got a base document, and then we've created annual reviews of it, but we haven't recreated the base document. So it is outstanding. It's been a huge change of style, with a modular document that will allow us to do individual plans, processes. So we can have a plan for how we do plan maintenance. We can have a plan for how we do winter. It all ties in, but then we don't have to review the whole thing at once. We can do them in a modular fashion. This is again following an all Wales model, but from what I'm aware, we're probably second or third furthest along on actually producing it, but we haven't got it done and it is behind. So that answers the plan. In terms of money, we can always do with more. I would say that in my time in 2008, I joined. We've always had money from Welsh Government until the last year. I'm assuming there's other priorities and stuff, and that's been difficult. But in those years where we've had less from Welsh Government, I've had more capital internally. So actually, although it's not enough, I've had more internally from the local members and more capital given to me in recent years than I have probably through most of my time working. So can do with more, but always grateful to receive it. Depth of surfacing and issues of surfacing not lasting as long. We do the same thing we've done for a very long time. There's two ways to resurface a road. There's preventative measures and there's reactive measures. If a road gets to a very poor condition, we will plane it out to the same depth as we used to, and we replace the surfacing. That is what we call planing with surface inlay. It uses a I won't use the technical term, I'm very tempted. It's a polymer modified SMA. This basically means it's a chemically bound bitumen material. We pay a little bit more for it than others do because we go for a higher grade of tarmac. This is what has caused us problems probably over the last 10, 15 years. It was brought in from Europe, being a very good product. Because the tyre depths are different in this country, you need more grip on the road. Therefore, the road has to be opened up with more voids in it, which causes water to access. And because of the marginal temperatures in this country, we get a lot of freeze-thaw cycles. So SMAs themselves haven't been a great success, but they are much easier to lay, much quicker, much cheaper. And health and safety-wise, they are far, far better than the old road surfaces. Given a choice, I'd use hot rolled asphalt every time. but the difference in price is probably double, if not more than that. So it depends if you want 20 roads done with our standard surface material or 10 done with hot rolled asphalt. It's all about balance and trying to prioritise what we spend where. So a main roundabout, in a Swansea roundabout, for instance, we would try and do in a heavier duty material that costs a bit more, but then we wouldn't have to go back for so long. Preventative measures then they look different. So when you get something in the 5-year programme that says we are doing this road, it may be plain and resurface or inlay, or it may be micro asphalt. Micro asphalt is a bit like the old surface dressing stuff you used to see as a kid with the chippings. It's a much better system now. We don't get very few complaints for it. Some, but not many. And this is a very thin layer that goes over the top that basically reconditions the road, seals the joints, and stop the water getting in. So you get another, I don't know, 7 to 10 years from it with micro asphalt, whereas a resurfacing system should last between 10 to 15. And I say it should, you will get deterioration and small defects building up. Fabian Way, for example, was about 5 years ago. We laid it. It's starting to show some wear in places. We're thinking of putting a rejuvenator over it as a trial, something others have used very well, particularly some of these companies that buy and own and run a road. And if they're using it, we know there's good value for money. And thank you, Stuart, for that comment. That's a good one. But we're looking at possibly doing that as a trial to see how the finances go. But that would give us another 5 or 6 years on top of the lifespan for a much lower cost. So it's all about balancing the cost effectiveness of the different treatments across the wider network. This would also be why you get some people saying, why haven't you done our road? Why have you done this one? Well, for us, it's about forward planning. We can say, if I can resurface this road now at a third the cost or a quarter of the cost, and that lasts 6 or 7 years, we'll allow this one to degrade a little bit more. It won't be any more expensive to repair when we do it. But it's about that whole life costing of the network. So it's not quite as straightforward as this one looks bad, we'll do it. That's the way we used to work, and can't afford it anymore. Simply don't get enough funding to work on a worst first basis. Drains and drain planning. We did put a bid in through the ERF programme for additional resources for drains, which I understand has been extended, and we've extended it each year, and we look to be extending it again. That has really helped us. Previously, we used to have a 3-year cycle, and I would suspect sometimes we were a year behind. What happens is if you've got a heavy rainfall, all our teams will be diverted onto reactive work and stopping the flooding and all those places that had severe problems. But if we do that, then they're not doing their routine work. So we had a real problem with that routine work backing up. And it ended up being that we was just the major emergency places and the really the important places we were getting to. We managed to get funding, say, for an extra couple of tankers and an extra team to look at the water courses and culverts. That has been vital to us because we use them to do the routine. These guys do routine works, and we are up to date with that now. For the first time since I've been up there, it's been excellent. It means that regular visits undertaken to drains. To give you an example of how that helps and how that plans, actually, it's around the corner from where Stuart lives in Uplands. Happens to be near where I live as well, but it was just fortunate I saw this. We had a team from Cardiff Drains cleaning a drain, and I saw them back on 4 times in the same week. And I asked them if the drain was blocked or if there was a break or what the problem was. They cleaned it thoroughly each time, but each time that when they'd driven past again, they noticed it was full. And that is because uphill of that drain, the years and years of lack of cleaning has fed through the system. And it's this drain they were stopping in. So they worked it out, they noticed it, and they went back 4 days running, and the drain was solid for 4 days. But after that, they noticed it wasn't filling up. So the consequences of doing routine cleaning is definitely planning for the future. And we've got serious rainfall coming. Climate change is with us. We have to acknowledge that. We are much better than we used to be at predicting where rainfall comes. We've brought in systems that actually we've got a predictive rainfall model for Swansea that gives us an idea of on about 30 different sites what sort of rainfall we'll have that day. So we've worked with our weather forecasts on getting this. Therefore, we know that if actually it's only going to rain in north of Swansea and the south and the west is going to be relatively dry, we can dedicate our resources to the north. So where there are issues, we can focus on those. And this is all planning for the future with climate change because it is going to get wetter. You look at the rainfall figures, and even if they haven't increased much, the rainfall intensity is massively different. If you look at Llandewi Corner in the Gower as one of our big problems, it floods to about 8 inches, 9 inches of depth sometimes. and this is the main route into sort of Horton in the Penrice area. So if you get 8 inches of water there, the road is closed, but the rain stops. It takes maybe an hour or two to filter through the catchment area, and then it disappears because the drains actually work really well. But what we can't cope with is the rainfall intensity, and that is something we are trying to plan for, and we have to plan for, because it will affect everybody. Rainfall intensity is so much more than it used to be. We can clean the drains more. We've got, with the extra money we've been given, we have what's called our wet route. So, for instance, 6 drains leading into Calais Square, which has been a prone place for flooding for us. We do those every time we get a wet Met Office warning, or we get over 20 mils of rain for a day forecast, or it's about there anyway. We will go and clean those 6 drains to make sure they are clean. And since we've been doing that, Calais Square hasn't actually flooded. Now, we could have just been getting lucky, but I've got to take some credit for it, I think, for the teams. We've got the same issue with Gila Gorse. We've got the same issue on Pantlasso Road leading to Morriston Hospital. I was unfortunate to be on call one night where both the road by the Deers Leap and the road by Pantlasso both flooded, which meant Morriston Hospital was inaccessible. And I had 2 men in a tanker to try and deal with it because it was overnight. So these things for us, the preparation is key. And that's something we have done very, very well with good help from the bidding through ERF and the continued help for those. I think that covers most of the projects that the comments that Stuart mentioned. I hope I didn't go too much into scrutiny rather than planning. I tried to sort of give it a twist, but I can leave it there for somebody else.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. Yeah, if you answer that fully for Councillor Rice. Yeah, Wendy.
I would like to congratulate Bob and his team, because there's nothing I haven't learnt of Bob about roads, because he always answers, always does what I ask. Just a question, you said about, houses that get flooded or businesses from the land. What about roles reversed, where the land is flooding the roads and causing massive issues, which it's not my ward, it's the next ward, was my ward, but it's causing issues in my ward. And I know we're not supposed to bring up wards, but the question is there.
Okay. Yeah, it goes both ways. Water goes off a road into property. We've got certain rights to discharge in relation to compensation if we were to put formal drainage in, and we do try and look at where we can do that to stop flooding on the roads. The other way, off land onto road, is quite difficult. There is a section of the Highways Act that allows us to enforce on people that are deliberately discharging onto the road. The issue here is what is discharge and what is just natural runoff. In terms of the Land Drainage Act, every property owner is responsible for their land on the downhill side of the slope. So if water comes off somebody's house onto yours, you've got the right to try and defend your land, to stop the water coming in and to deal with it. You haven't got the duty to stop it going onto someone else's. And that's the way I understand it. With the road, water can run off a road. Again, Clangery Corner is a prime example. All the water there comes off farmland, but it's not directed by the farmer. It's just the rainfall feeding through the land. So it's a very difficult one. If somebody, for instance, points out that there's a mobile home being set up with a new drainage arrangement and they're pumping water out through a hedge bank onto the road, can deal with that every time. Whether they'll listen to us and we have to go to court, etc. It's not something we do very often. We'd much prefer to work with people. Caught a developer last week digging a trench through a little bit of parksland towards the highway with the intention of draining his house and all its grounds onto the road. 30-foot of trench already been dug, and obviously we saw it as going past and we've stopped them. So yes, we can, but it's not always simple, straightforward, particularly where somebody's stripped off surfacing. So if the field is muddy rather than full of grass, we do get quite a lot of problems with new developments, but that should be covered through a development process. If there's highways agreements in place, our drainage team will have advised on that, and they will cover the land drainage issue. I would say that our land drainage boys, Mike Sweeney and his team, although they deal with the capital highways drainage, they also give all the advice on land drainage. So they are there as a consultant to give advice to all the other teams. and to whoever needs it, including the public. I mean, we're there with the local lead flood authority for our area. So where it's small water courses and streams, etc., we're responsible for monitoring those, not for doing the work or for owning them, but for ensuring others do to the best of our abilities. But that land drainage advice can be really useful. We use it in highways. We go to Mike's team on a sort of different hats on to try and get them advice from them. So that's what we do there. Okay.
And just to follow on, I don't answer on this, but where a river runs through a field and the river bursts its banks and floods the road, I don't go into whose responsibility, because I'm halfway through that at this moment in time. Who then owns that river?
The landowner would own the river, but I'm going to say, but generally big rivers are NRW oversight. We oversight small rivers and streams. NRW oversight on big rivers, but whether they get involved or not, when it's just a road flooding, in their words, difficult one for me.
Yes, that's why I mentioned it. It is difficult. Will?
Thanks, Chair. Just a quick one, really. The patch team is really helpful addition, and they work really hard, and they always do a great job. The only thing I'd like to bring up is pavements, because obviously we have a lot of issues that the patch team come out. We put pavements forward to be redone, and to be quite honest, there's always a huge, well, if they're ever done, there's a huge backlog, and they don't seem to be, high up the priority list pavements, which I understand. Obviously we've got only got so much money to go around, and the roads maybe take priority. But I'm just wondering if there could be some kind of, obviously you don't need quite as much of it, but patch team for pavements, or if there's a priority list, or if we could see where we are on the pavement resurfacing, really, because it seems like you get your allotted days for the patch, which is great, and you can use it for pavements, of course, but there's always so much to catch up on the roads that the pavements never get done. So just a question on that, please. Thanks.
Yeah, if you can explain the patch team and how it works, and maybe then can look at, can it be improved or can't it?
Okay,
I think that's what we're looking at mainly. What can be improved? Because what I can see at the moment, we're doing a very good job. How do we move forward with it?
I'm going to use my favourite phrase that it's all a bit of a balance, to be honest. What you refer to as patch, we now call our SRS team. The reason being for this, although it became known as patch, and it was a badly thought out acronym, to be honest, I think it was priority action in community highways or something. So I think the word came first. We've changed it because basically it's a small resurfacing scheme. So what they do with patch isn't patching, it is resurfacing. So you rebuild the road, you plane it out, and you resurface it properly. So we wanted to give that a definition. So at the moment for this year, I'm calling it SRS brackets patch, just to make sure there's a sort of bit of continuity. They can do pavements while in the days that they're with you in your ward. If you want to ask the patch team to do pavements for you instead of carriageways, they can. Obviously, the cost benefit and the size of work is much better suited for carriageways. The equipment they've got is intended to plane out carriageways to 40-50 mil of depth. On a footway, that's probably a little bit different and difficult to use the size of vehicles they've got on footways, but it can be done, and it has been done in other wards where they've got priorities that are footways rather than carriageways. It's not something I particularly want to extend in the future, because patch is actually one of the least cost effective ways we've got of doing resurfacing. I will probably pay 2/3 as much again for patch. It has to be run on a day works basis. So we look at one scheme, one place, one day, move on the next day. It's a maximum of around 80 to 100 square meters, depending on what materials we can get in. It works much more efficiently if you've got a large scheme and you plane the road out and then you relay the road and you get 200-300 tons in. So for us, it's much better to have bigger schemes. Patch is very, very good. And the one thing I would say that it's really helped both councillors and staff is that patch is councillor driven. We'll have suggestions we go to for every council, every ward, and then we'll give you the opportunity to substitute those as long as they're suitable. For me, then, the benefit that gets you off my back when it comes to resurfacing, I'll be blunt. I can then look at the money I got for resurfacing to spend it in an engineering basis and allocate it for cost effectiveness, knowing that the main problems you got and the headaches you got for coming from your customers are all going to be dealt with through patch. And that's why it works for me. Yes, we could set up a similar team for pavements. I'm not certain it would be a good idea or that it would be as effective. It took patch a few years to get going. I would say footways suffer at the moment. We normally, or historically, we've had 3 tarmac gangs because we've diverted some things into the extra gully work, into the extra drainage work, and we have difficulty recruiting. We're down to usually having 1 tarmac team at the moment. Those tarmac teams tend to do most of the footway work. So it's hot material, dug up, replaced. It's sort of 10, 20 square meters a maximum in a day, usually laying about 3 to 4 ton of material. And only for the worst areas that are dangerous. So those will not be on surface deterioration. When we assess a footpath, there's actually assessments that say it's in good condition, it's in average condition, it's visually impaired, which is the ones we normally get. So people complaining about how poor it is, but actually it's just the way it looks, and structurally it's not too bad, and safety wise we're not liable. So those are the ones that cause us the most problems. People report them, we go, nah, we're not doing that. And that's where I've got to try and explain to things to people and lower expectations. So increasing the number of gangs, in terms of the value to the network and the value to the asset, I don't think it'd be a great idea, but do pass them through. We will inspect. If there is a safety issue, it will be logged, it will get there eventually. And we can't use the jet patch on footways either. So that's the other disadvantage we've got. But same time, footways don't get vehicle loading, they don't get driven on as much. And generally, if they're not dug up, they last pretty well. But services, we're still suffering from the years of cable installation, you know, with Virgin Media, etc., digging everything up, and obviously all the other services go through footways, and that will ruin the lifespan of a road of a footpath. Yeah, I think I've got that covered it. But yes, we could do it, but I wouldn't recommend it personally.
Okay, if I could come back, Chair, if you don't mind, just very quickly. Yeah, I think what you alluded to, and what I'm trying to say is that pavements don't seem to be a priority, and I think, you know, maybe we could improve the work plan on pavements. Certainly in my ward it'd be good. So I don't know if we could look at that. One of the issues with pavements, I mean, I've got several pavements with trip hazards where tree roots are bursting through, and they're genuine safety concern when you've got elderly people walking around. I think obviously years gone by, they didn't really give much thought into what trees were planted near pavements, and maybe we do that better now. Maybe that's something, if you could answer that. But, you know, going forward, every time I flag one of these, it's like, oh, you know, no one seems to deal with it. There's not really any plan, and it's either chop the tree down or what happens, you know, or leave it there, which always seems to be the option because no one wants to chop the trees down. So yes, just if you could just answer that, please, that'd be great. Thanks.
Sure, we do have a capital programme for footways, and I would call them footways or footpaths rather than pavements. Technically, in an engineering term, a pavement includes the carriageway. It's just something us engineers know about, and but I've got to try and remember. Footways is what you're talking about, yes. Yeah? So curb line to house. We do have a programme of those. We increased it probably 6 or 7 years ago. We increased it by a couple £100,000 a year, mainly because it was the main source of insurance complaint. So whereas the complaints and the accidents and the claims on roads are a higher value, we got more of them on footways with lower value sort of claims. So we invested quite a lot of money then, and every time we've had extra money until the last year, I've always put extra into footways. There is a 5-year programme in the same way as we have for carriageways for footways. The one thing I am looking at doing is trying to develop a scoring system, stroke assessment system for the footways in the same way that we've done with carriageways. So yeah, there is a bit of work coming on reviews. Previously, it tended to be on worst first, but I do want to do things like, okay, it's on a school route. It's a feeder route for one estate to another. So where you've got link roads or higher priority walking routes, they would get extra points, and we would sort of annotate things that way and give them scores and risk assessment. It's sort of in place, but it's not really publishable or durable yet. So yes, that is something we are looking at, and I don't know if that will help in terms of the overall. In terms of trees, it's a very good one for us. Within our safety policy and acknowledged through best practice guidance and the courts, tree roots are less of a liability to a highways department, because if they weren't, we'd have to cut a lot of highways trees down. And when you've got an environmental emergency and everybody wants street trees because it helps the look of it, but it makes people feel better. There's a lot of advantages to having trees, and you don't want to be treating them the same way. So there is a relaxation on how careful we've got to be around tree roots, providing it's obvious they're marked. That being said, I mean, I know there's some shocking tree roots just around the corner from Stuart's place. They're in the process of being looked at. When we deal with them, we firstly will assess if we consider them to be a danger. If they are a danger, we have to open up the footpath, leave it open, get parks to come in. They will assess them to see if they can cut the offending routes without damaging the tree. If they can't, we look at other options. Can we ramp over the roots to put them back, keep the tree in place? And if we can't do that, then we will remove the tree. So it's a 3 or 4 stage process. I think there's one road I'm doing at the moment. It's got about 12 trees that are causing problem with roots. 2 are dead, so we're taking them out. And of the rest of them, we're managing to save them all through selective pruning of roots or ramping. So it's a really tricky issue. When a tree becomes dangerous as well, they tend to stump it. So they'll cut off the top and leave the stump sticking out of the road. This is a park's job. We've asked them to leave it a metre high because that way they are clearly visible and you don't walk into them or trip over them. We then wait for batches of 10 or 20 and we get a contractor in to stump grind them, take them out, and then we'll fill back with tarmac. So it's a bit of a sort of collaboration between ourselves and parks. But I say, if you look outside the Guildhall, if you look on the way to the Wigan Pen, trees there had huge roots causing massive problems in the pavement, and you can see as you walk over them, the footway will ramp up and ramp down again. So that's an example of where we've dealt with it. But they should be dealt with by inspectors on a is it dangerous basis, and then we'll follow up through that. So that there is a safety inspection regime in place, and tree roots will be part of that regime. Okay.
Is there something then that can be added to the report on this to let councillors know who to contact on the first instance, just to get it started?
It's highways@swansea.gov.uk, same as everything else. It follows through our standard process. If it's a pothole, if it's a bit of surface deterioration on a road, it all goes to the highways inspector, and he will look at tree roots in the same way.
Okay, Will, off you go. Stuart, do you want to come back in? Or?
Just a very quick one, Chair. Just 2 very quick points. In terms of the patch team, just to reflect other people's comments, they're very good, and it's a good innovation. Is there going forward a possibility of maybe rebalancing some of the finances that go in, so we can get more money into the patch teams, potentially from planned maintenance? And the second one as well that I wanted to ask about is, one of the issues that we've seen kind of in terms of drainage is an innovation that's happened over the last 10, 15 years, which is bus build outs, and the way in which drains, they're quite difficult to deal with the historic drains that are there. What's our plan going forward with bus build outs? Are we going to continue that process or look at different ways of trying to deal with drainage? Because I can understand why people come up with the idea and how they could be effective, but it's just what they have in terms of impact, in terms of drainage and water holding or any debris holding that they do. Thanks.
Okay, patch and budget. What I would say is my core basic budget within the highways allocation for carriageways is about 1.3 million, of which initially patch took around 500 to 550,000. To do the original version of patch, the unextended version, I'd now be looking at 750 to 800,000 pound. Material costs have gone through the roof, and we use a lot of tonnage there. So if I look at my core budget only without any additional funding that's been given to us, then actually, if I increase patch, or even if I kept patch at the same level, I'm looking at having around 600 grand for resurfacing, which is peanuts. So I've got to be very careful with it. We are looking at potentially, the last 2 years have seen patch extended. We are looking to try and see if we can do that again. If we've possibility of additional funding, and we will then look at using some of that to pay for the extended version of patch. I say it's been going this 3 years now. This will be the 3rd year with the extended version. But in that would cost something like £1.2 million a year for patch as it stands at the moment. And if I did that out of my core budget, that would leave 100 grand for surfacing, which is one road. So it's a question of, again, a question of balance. Yes, I can do it. It's not cost effective. It is very useful in small, medium area repairs for keeping roads together and for keeping people happy.
Yeah, thank you for that again. Andrew?
Yeah, can I just come in on the small resurfacing scheme, formerly known as patch? So, Councillor Rice, I don't think you were here at the time when we used to have the old style patch team with the number of days that were allocated per wards back then. But I think it would have been about 3 years ago, is it, that it's changed with the additional money that we put into the SRS scheme to give quite a few more days per wards, and especially allocated on like a big ward yourself. You wouldn't be allocated against perhaps a smaller ward then for residents. So it's that we changed the formula effectively to be based on per member rather than per ward like it used to be. See, well, this did come with an additional need for funding for the SRS. So, but certainly we, as Bob said, we do have to weigh up against everything else that we do. But it's certainly something we are looking forward at retaining going forward anyway, where we can anyway. So I think personally, I think the SRS team is absolutely fantastic. This was part of the reason that we look to rebrand, let's say, then away from patch into SRS, because what they were doing is resurfacing. Even though it's not an entire road, they're doing resurfacing pavements and roads, and it's quite right that is reflected in the name, really. And as members, I no doubt that you have a number of on-street highways complaints, with road resurfacing of various areas in your ward, and the SRS team actually allows you to deal with those at direct requests from the residents that are raising them with you anyway. So we can certainly get that a commitment anyway.
Sorry, I realised I didn't answer part of the question. Adding to what Andrew said, the patch team generally runs from April to around December. And that's when we use all our money up. It's all gone, and every ward's had its visits by then. But what we are trying to do then is we use them to do pre-patching work where we're doing some of the preventative works on other roads. We'll try and use the same machines, plants, and the stuff that we bought in for this. So we'll double use them when we use them on some of our larger resurfacing schemes doing preparation work. So there's quite a good connection between the two teams. Stuart asked about bus build-ups, ramps, etc. I wasn't aware that we were doing any more bus build-outs at the moment. I know some of them were stopped. There is always a clash a little bit between different views and as engineers, there's different priorities. My priority is very firmly don't damage my highway and don't put flooding problems onto it. But I've got to accept sometimes that I'm going to have to deal with additional problems where there are provisions for placemaking, where we're trying to increase pedestrian access and flow. This could cause me extra problems, and it's the question of working with my colleagues, and we try to work together, but it's, even with all the goodwill in the world, you don't always get everything right. So where the number of raised plateaus on crossing points are increasing, that's causing me problems where you put a drain next to it or you don't put a drain next to it, and then there will be flooding issues near to the ramps. So different competing agendas. We're trying to work together. We do work together very well. But I'm not wary of any more bus bays, and I'm trying to minimise the number of ramps, but we'll see how well I do.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I'm very surprised Andrew hasn't mentioned the community funds. You can use that if you want to do small works, like we used in Poneless, we used some of our community fund to do some work in the school, which was patching a car park. So you can use some of your fund, Will, if you want to. Yeah. Will,
Thanks. And so, sorry to come back. It's just a question that's jumped into my mind. I've been meaning to ask for years. With back to Patch again. Sorry, not Patch. The small road resurfacing program. I understand that obviously the Parks Department's assets are different to the Highways Department's assets, and I understand that your job and your team's job is to just look after the highway assets. However, sometimes you've only got one opportunity to improve a path in the park, for example, and the Patch team might be it. So, I mean, I've often found it hard to get, or impossible to get the team to look at, for example, there's a little bit of cliff path in my ward, which has never been, there's never any money to improve it. And there's a little area in one of the parks, which is Tarmac Road, which again, can't get anything to relook at it. So I'm just wondering if we could relax that rule, maybe just to one day, the Patch team could work in parks. Thanks.
As far as I'm concerned, you can spend your money in your ward where you want to, if it's one of my assets. So I will have a word with the Patch team to say that if you come to them and ask for them to do a path in a park, and it is a council park, and it's not a community council park, or it's not been offloaded in some way, then yes, no problem at all. With a lane, we won't touch unadopted stuff. If it's an adopted lane or a council-owned lane, then again, no issue with Patch going in there and doing you allocating some of your time to those, providing obviously the work is suitable, and we can get there. So there are lanes sometimes which are very difficult, where you've got no access for planing machines. You have to get tippers in to drive up to a lane that with access is really difficult. So it can be difficult, and there can be justifiable reasons, but I would expect them to be explained to you. But if you want work in a park, yeah, I've done it. And I think Andrew's done some. I would certainly recommend that. And we do actually, there's a corporate view on assets now. I've taken on all effectively hard surfaces outside of facilities, outside of schools, and sure there was another one outside of housing. I do the work for housing, but they pay for it because of the way the budgets are set up. So providing it is council owned or hard and not in a facility, not in a school or etc., then I will be responsible for maintaining it anyway. The budget for parks footpaths is very, very small. It's actually a budget I borrowed from Emergency Access Works. We now have it Emergency Access Works stroke parks footpaths, and I think it's 30-40 grand a year. But we do that work, and we worked with parks to go around all the parks to assess the condition, to give us a priority of what we can do in terms of resurfacing. There was some severe damage in Singleton Park last year that we've done a little bit of. I've done work up in, I think some in Pontclue, different, very, very different places. But let's say one engineer went around, surveyed all the parks, so we've got an overall idea of what the condition's like. But if you want to raise something specifically in a park as well, yes, it will cut into your time that you've got on your highways. But if you want to do that, saying providing it's council owned, not offset to, if you look at Underhill Park, that's obviously been passed over to the community council, so we wouldn't touch the driveway there. But if it's council owned and it's one of our assets, yeah, no problem at all.
Okay, so cliff path's okay. All right, thank you. The first part, not obviously in the middle of the cliffs. I appreciate that's different. All right, thank you.
Right, can I thank everybody for their questions? Before we move on, it's on the planned maintenance on number 5 and 5.6 in particular, where it says the service is seeking to trial the system. Can you explain that and how far forward we've gone on it? 5.6.
And a metre, something like that, £3 square metre. So for Fading Way, where it would cost on £1 million to resurface it, you're looking at somewhere about 108,000 to to rejuvenate it, and that would theoretically extend its life by about 5 years. It's something we're looking at. I've seen it. Sorry, I've realised I was talking without my mic on. It was really interesting what I said then. So I was referring to the rejuvenator system on what we've looked at. It's produced by a company we work with. They can turn it out about between £3 and £5 a square metre, depending on how much you do. Obviously, the more you do, the cheaper it gets. We were looking at doing half the Fabian Way, and then we realised actually if we did the whole of the Fabian Way, it wouldn't be that much more. And what we were looking at seeing if we could do it there, it's about the right timing. It's got to be about 5 or 6 years old. So the oils and the surface of the road is starting to break up and gaps are starting to form. This gets into the gap, it seals the joints, it stops the water getting in, it stops the freeze thaw action. I say it looks brilliant. It's been used in Bristol where they've done the ring road on alternate lanes, and then they show you 3 years later what it's like. We need to do a little bit more investigation into it, but it was just something that came up as a suggestion this year. We're not hard and fast going to be doing it. We haven't got the money yet as well. We haven't programmed it in, but it's certainly something that we like the look of. A thing I didn't mention here, and we are very, very keen on again, is warm mix tarmac. Well, I may have put it in there, but I've written so many reports. Warm mix tarmac rather than hot tarmac is a cooler product, normal. It comes with extra chemicals. It's a little bit more expensive, but it knocks the carbon intake down massively. So in terms of being carbon friendly, it's hugely better than the stuff we normally buy. All our big suppliers, Hanson, Tarmac, etc., they're producing this stuff. And we are looking at the advantages of doing it. Obviously, when you've got a small budget, you tend to try and want to go as cheaply as possible for the same material. So paying an extra sort of 10, 15% to get a product that is more environmentally friendly is good in some reasons, but not so much in others. But where we have used it, again, we used it on Innisfallen roundabout. We had a high quality material there, and we used the warm mix because actually it gave us better durability and workability. When you've got a hot tarmac, by the time you get from the quarry, it's cooled down. We have heated lorries, so the lorries keep the tarmac warm. This stuff, because it comes off at a cooler temperature, it doesn't cool down as quickly. So the workability period is longer, which gives us, it's a fabulous stuff to lay. And the guys were really singing its praises. So it's got a lot of benefit and a lot of prospect to it. But at the moment, it's not something we've said we will use across the board because of we'd lose 10, 15% of our number of schemes. So it's something we're looking at. And again, going forward, when you're looking at carbon issues, people talk about plastics in roads. Again, it's not something we'll develop ourselves, but we are working with all our major suppliers and where an alternative is for a recycled plastic, or whether you're looking at putting plastic fibers in the top surface of a road to help keep it together. We look at all of those things. We try and sort of work out which ones are going to be good to trial, which ones are not. And we do a lot of talking amongst other Welsh authorities. So there's a lot of the engineers, we like copying each other when someone does something well. And I think that's something that works in our favour. Okay.
So moving forward, I would have said, where would we get a report to say this is what we're going to do in the future? It wouldn't come here. It would either go straight to the cabinet member and then through cabinet. But to me, that's the way forward. It's improvement on what we're doing now, and that's what we're looking to do. So I think that's what would sort of come out of this, is the way we move forward on tarmacking. The other thing that I've been thinking about is the road inspections. How do we carry out the road inspections? Before I say anything, in case you're doing it.
Two types of inspection. There's a condition inspection, which are carried out by our plant maintenance teams on a 5-year cycle. We survey all the roads in Swansea. That is a visual inspection on this agreed process that we've got across Wales. On top of that, then there are machine-based assessments of A roads, B roads, C roads on a certain frequency basis. So every A's done every other year, I think. We do one lane, then we do the other lane, the other direction. Those are done by scanner. It's a machine that basically drives the road, scans it, tells you what condition it's in, good, bad, or in the middle. And we get a report back saying these are the areas where your surface friction is low. So obviously if it picks it up and it's somewhere near traffic lights, we'll do some small area working, and we might put some anti-friction surface in over the top, but it will give us a report on issues like that. So where there's a ride quality with lots of rumbles and depressions and undulations, where there's, to say, the decrease in surface friction, really struggles with back lanes and stuff. You know, sometimes you get a lane that's got a little bit of grass up the middle. I mean, that's an instant fail, an instant red, but actually the road works for what it does. So we have to take a bit of a view on it. So that's scanner. We can get inspections done by video. We've got a company called Geister does some survey work at the moment in relation to the signage, and we can get surveys off them. And the theory going forward is they will be able to analyze off the video, say, for instance, how deep the potholes are. They'll be able to give you a ring-in and a warning to say that at this point in this location, when we did our scan, there was a pothole that was this deep. I mean, that's great, don't get me wrong, but spending a lot of money on doing that, I'm not certain it's worth the risk when we haven't got enough money to fix them all. I think my priority will always be fixing things rather than finding things. In terms of safety inspections, we have a safety policy that has to stand up to court. It's what we defend the council on whenever there is a claim against us. We are very, very good with claims. We have been at one stage, we were probably the best in the country, largely down to us having lots of claims. So we had to defend them. So we had to get good. My predecessor takes a lot of credit for that he set it all up. But we have worked with it. If we decide that we are going to fight the claim, we win 95% of the time. So, but we are very genuine with it. If somebody has an issue and we know we couldn't defend it, we'll pay up. We've got a good reputation in court. And that is all based on this safety inspection regime that says, and I'll speak of the old regime first because that's easy to understand. Every carriageway and every footway has a hierarchy. So within footways, you'll have a primary route, say Oxford Street in the town centre. You'll have strategic routes, will have link roads. And if you think of the branches of a tree, as you go down, it gets thinner, and you'll end up in local access roads and residential streets. For those streets, they will be inspected yearly, and it will be a walked inspection of the footway. They will do the carriageway at the same time. So an inspector has walked every road in Swansea once a year, minimum. When you get to the city centre, it's monthly, and there are lots of degrees in between of 3 monthly, 6 monthly, depending on the importance to the network of the road, the number of the footfall on it. Going forward, this has all been reviewed nationally, and across Wales, we've accepted an agreed standard again. Whereas previously we'd make a judgmental call on whether a road was strategic, a link road, a local access road. Now it is largely on numbers. So footway counts. If there's only 10 pedestrians, it's going to be the lowest category. And they've taken away the friendly names, and they've just, I think they called them carriageway 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and footway 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which doesn't really give you an idea of what they are. But it helps us defend claims in court, because if you referred to something as a link road, people would say this is a link road because they feel it links two places, when that's not necessarily the overall justification for why it was branded this way. So there's a guide, there's a set of rules that say how we are going to inspect the highway, and providing we comply with that, we have what's called a Section 58 defence, which means we can defend against claims. So it is very, very rigorous. It is very contemporaneous. It's all done on PDA, so they log things as they go. We've got a couple of issues at the moment that we're dealing with in some areas, but our inspectors are turning over. We've got some new inspectors coming through. We've got to get them trained. But generally, we've got a very, very solid inspection regime.
Right, and say now we've got potholes in your ward. You go on the internet and you report the pothole. That then gets inspected. Do you get any reports from the rubbish lorry drivers with regards, because they are on every road in Swansea every week. So if anybody's going to hit the pothole, it's going to be them. I'm on about, a pothole, because every time I put it in, I always send a photo. Because a pothole to me is where you can lose a small child. So do they contribute to us finding out about any damage to the roads?
In the new code of practice, it was actually suggested that people like sweeper drivers, bin men, or domestic waste engineers, they do the surveys and they tell you what you've got. The difficulty for me is, on one hand, we've generally got around 2,000 safety defects in the system at any one time. We have to be very distinct between the pothole initiative, which is where you report things and we fix them, and the legal situation and our statutory duty is where you report things and we tell you we're not going to be doing them. There are intervention levels. If they don't breach those, we have no statutory duty to repair. And this is the problem with unqualified people making suggestions about what is dangerous on the road. So yes, we encourage all our drivers, if they see something nasty, to report it, but keep it to the really bad stuff, as you say, the stuff you'd lose a child in. What we tend to get is people ringing stuff in saying it's 10 inches deep. We get there and it's not a safety defect. And statutory wise and responsibility wise, before the pothole initiative, we would write to people and say, I'm sorry, we're not doing it. It doesn't breach our intervention levels. Goodbye. And that was it. And that caused a lot of problems. The whole thing with the pothole initiative, the biggest gain for me is not the repairs it's doing, is this ability to be able to answer people and actually try and fix what they've reported. But it's a completely separate way of working for the two different sides. We'd love to use bin men and sweeper drivers, but frankly, putting them all on a course, and if you go to court and somebody's reported something or said this is dangerous or this is not dangerous, the first thing that comes out is the qualifications. So we'd have to be very, very careful of using anyone to do inspections other than reporting things on an ad hoc basis. But it's like you say, I like to train the councillors. We have conversations about what to report, and it makes it useful for me because then you're getting genuine issues rather than something that's actually not very important.
Okay, thanks for that. Very good session. I can't see anybody's got suggestions on how we move forward on this. It seems as if we're doing everything we can do at this moment in time. Whether we get better tarmac, quicker laying, faster drying, and that's the only way we can move forward, I think. So, Stuart, I just noticed your hand up.
Yeah, sorry, just to reiterate, I guess, what's been said. It is an area of the service, as with many services, where we're, I guess, always looking towards best practice. As Bob's mentioned, we're really tuned into things like the County Surveyors Society Wales, which is the All Wales highways and transport sort of group, really, and within that there's subgroups, some dealing on highways maintenance, asset management. And it very much is, we're all looking to try and see what the best practice is out there and how we best maintain things. It's certainly not a service that sits on its hands and does things that's always been done. This is the way we've always done it. It's trying to seek the best way of doing it. And I guess embedded at the core is the principle of the whole life costing, and about how we try and get the intervention in at the right time to prevent the more expensive repairs. And it's this sort of I guess a very well known kind of deterioration curve, which is like I guess it's a slide which starts off on a gentle slope and then gets steeper and steeper, and the further down that deterioration you go, the much more expensive. It's sort of an exponential rate. So we try and get the intervention in the right time. So it certainly is something that we're always looking to try and bring best practice in and get the most cost-effective measures. And there's always a change in technology, whether it's the materials, as Bob's mentioned, from the rejuvenators to the sort of the colder mixed materials, which will have a very positive carbon impact. And then it's technology itself. And I strongly suspect in the future, the kind of rate of development of sort of scanning the roads and things will change immeasurably, and I would expect to see AI, so artificial intelligence, sort of evaluating a lot of these quite effectively as well ahead. So I'm sure things will change, but we're very much it's a team and an ethos of trying to keep our finger on the pulse and improve things. So thank you very much, and thanks for the opportunity for the discussion.
Yep, thank you, Stuart. Can't see anybody else. Okay, thank you very much for that. Thank you for coming, Bob. Very good report, better answers, and Cabinet member as well. Okay, thank you. We've only got item 5 left, and that's the work plan. So nothing's changed. It's as it is in the report. So next month we got the More Homes delivery program. So we welcome Andrea along to that one. Thank you very much. That's the end of the meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, bye.
Bye.